Today I want to talk to you about the cost of hearing loss. In other words, the cost of hearing treatment or the cost of not treating your hearing. The true cost may well surprise you, and this video may not be going the way you think it is. Welcome to EMA Dan. If you're new here, my name is Daniel and a very warm welcome. I'm a hearing care professional and the owner of Ear Studio in Castle Hill in Sydney. But more importantly, I spend my days helping people, not just to hear better, but actually to understand better and leave behind the challenges of hearing loss. And in this channel, I break down how hearing really works, how the hearing care landscape looks in Australia, and what you can do to get the best possible outcome. Now, I invite you to follow along in this journey. Today, we're going to discuss something that I always discuss with patients considering hearing treatment, and I'm going to be quite direct. Now, as a German, that's not too difficult for me, but I know that here in Australia I need to be a little bit careful, so let's try to find the right balance. What's really important to me is that everyone understands the result of their decisions, and therefore it's really important that we discuss these things in real terms. I'm going to talk to you today like I'd talk to you if you were sitting in my clinic. And once we have established your hearing and have established that you have some level of hearing loss, and sometimes even before that, I say something like, if you've been diagnosed with hearing loss, you just can't ignore it away. Unfortunately, you will have to pay for it, one way or the other. Now, I know that that might sound strange to some people or maybe even a bit harsh, but really, it's true. I want to make a quick comparison and tell you a story. I was on my way, I think it was, sometime last year. And I stood at the baggage claim at I think it was Brisbane Airport. And when I first came across that, like one of these billboards, there was an ad by the Australian government. And it was titled, Choose Your Heart. And it was about quitting smoking. Actually, let me bring that up for a second here. So you see the ad that I saw right here. It basically says, choose your heart at the top. On one hand, you can quit smoking. And on the other side, if you don't quit smoking, there's another heart that awaits or that possibly awaits. And these are the consequences of a decision. The decision that this ad is conveying here is stop smoking or don't stop smoking. And both ways are hard. And in some way, so it is with hearing loss, just that in many cases, it wasn't your choice to develop hearing loss in the first place, but the result is the same. Unfortunately, you have it, and unfortunately, you have to bear the consequences of that decision that you're considering. And that decision is, should I go and get it treated, or should I just put it off and keep hanging on without hearing devices for a little while longer? In a consultation, I would normally say, today you can choose between one of two ways. You can treat your hearing loss or you can not treat your hearing loss. Both decisions will cost you something. And before you decide, I want to make sure that you know exactly what it would cost you if you don't go with treatment and what it costs you if you do go with treatment. Now, on one hand, you can decide to treat your hearing and to get some hearing aids. And in that case, what you pay with is mostly money, financial money. And that can be a significant amount. But the cost of hearing treatment is not only a financial cost. You will also have to pay like a non-financial price. You may need to pay with vanity, the perception of other people. You may need to really get over it. And that sometimes can be really difficult to admit to yourself, oh, okay, I just have to do it. In a matter of fact, I found that middle-aged men, especially those that are bald, they really tend to struggle with that. For them, it's often not even about the money, but they cannot get themselves to give up the image of this 6 feet tall and bulletproof type of guy. They struggle with the thought of being thought of as old or having issues, and they struggle with what other people in their company may think of them if all of a sudden they wear hearing aids. And they can be quite self-conscious about it all. And it's actually a real thing. It's a real thing one may need to pay with. One may need to give up, worrying about what others think or how it may look. And that is a real cost. But there are other costs to consider. There's the handling and managing of yet another thing in your life. Yep, you got to charge them, you clean them, put them in, take them out, put them in again. And don't forget to take them out when you have a shower. Change filters, don't forget them when you go on holiday, and so it goes. Yes, hearing devices, if you get them, they do need management. And some people initially may be put off by that. In reality, it's not that bad, right? But it's a price that you have to pay, that there's just one more thing that needs charging and managing. On the other hand, you could say, well, I can't pay with that. I can't get myself to give up what the others may think. I just can't get myself to. I work in a school. What are the kids thinking? I work as a board member. What are the others thinking? I'm the only one with hearing aid. And at that stage, you may decide not to treat your hearing loss. And if that's the case, we need to look at the cost of not treating your hearing, because you may just pay with something much worse. If you don't treat your hearing loss, there are costs too. And before we dig into that, let me say something. I own a business that's Ear Studio in Castle Hill, and we do make a living by providing hearing care in my clinic. So whenever I talk about the costs and consequences, when I say something along those lines, that can well be perceived as like a sales pitch. However, if you go to a professional, I think you would expect from that professional that they give you all the information related to their patient's condition. And exactly that's what I want to do. At that stage, I should also say in the next couple of minutes, I'll make some references to some academic studies. All of those studies are linked in the description of the video if you're interested in looking at them. My motivation here is really to provide as much information as possible so you can make a well-informed decision for your health. And here it's really not about judging what's right or wrong. But let's keep going. There was a study where they looked at people with normal hearing versus those that had hearing loss but didn't do anything about it. And they found that over a 10-year period that the general healthcare costs are around 46% higher for those with untreated hearing loss. And it also showed a much, much higher rate of hospitalization of those with untreated hearing loss. The study concluded, and I quote here, this study demonstrates the beneficial outcomes of use of hearing aids in reducing the probability of any emergency department visits and any hospitalizations, and in reducing the number of nights in hospital. I think that's significant. I think that is something that needs to be considered. And it's a real thing to consider when you're deciding not to get hearing treatment. According to that study, you may have or your risk for hospitalization may be much higher if you're living with untreated hearing loss. What can't be said, and the study wasn't quite clear on that because they didn't look in that in particular, is how much can the risk be reduced when appropriately reducing your hearing loss. That wasn't part of that particular study. But there are other studies, and in this case, one particular, and then a set of 8, that show a very clear difference in another matter, gray matter in that case. And that is a really interesting study. I think it started in 2010 or something. It went over a 12-14-year period. It was a very extensive study that was done by the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. It was actually a dementia study rather than a hearing study. And it was found that the largest modifiable risk factor of developing or worsening cognitive decline is actually untreated hearing loss and the social isolation that comes from it. Social isolation is often a direct result of untreated hearing loss because people just can't communicate, so they start to withdraw from these social gatherings. And I want to be very clear here. The study doesn't say if you don't have hearing aids, you'll get dementia, as some people may want to frame it to increase hearing aid sales. We definitely don't want to do that. We don't want to take things out of context. Basically what they did is they looked at dementia and cognitive decline and at all risk factors. And then they grouped them into two types. The risk factors that we can't modify, such as genetics, for example, and then modifiable risk factors is what we can change. And the outcome was staggering. A person with hearing loss, but without hearing treatment, so a person that has decided not to go ahead with hearing aids, has on average a 14% higher risk of developing or worsening cognitive decline over people that have hearing loss but did actually pursue hearing treatment. And that was just one study. And then there's a meta-analysis that looked at multiple studies with a combined pool of 126,000 individuals that were assessed. So it's a huge number of people. And the result of that, and I quote again here, in this meta-analysis, the usage of hearing restorative devices, that's hearing aids or cochlear implants, by participants with hearing loss was associated with 19% decrease in hazards of long-term cognitive decline. That's a 19% decrease by treating your hearing. I'm sure if there was a pill that you could take that reduces your risk factors of long-term cognitive decline by 19%, I think nearly everyone would take it, I'm sure. Now, these are a couple of serious medical risks that go along with untreated hearing loss. And another factor that I want to mention is the use it or lose it aspect. I'm sure you've heard that many times. If you haven't had good hearing for a while, what happens is that the ears have delivered consistently low information up to the brain. And over time, the brain may clear that part of the brain out where it goes about processing of sound, and we call that auditory deprivation. That means that the brain essentially unlearns how to understand speech, and if that lasts for too long, we may not be able to restore the hearing loss and treat it successfully later, as an ear problem has become a brain problem. And that's actually such an important point that I'll make a separate video about that and what you can do about it soon. Now, with the medical costs out of the way, let's look at social and emotional factors. And let's face it, you're likely here because you or someone around you has noticed some issues with your hearing. Those issues likely won't go away. They likely get worse, I hate to say it. So the children that are upset, they stop talking to you. The grandchildren in the car, at a school run, they don't repeat things 3 times. They just stop talking. And the wife or husband, they can also get annoyed. And I get it. You may say, well, it's a bit over dramatic when the children and the wife stop talking. But in reality, that is what I hear in my clinic all the time. And I wish I could record it and show some videos because these interactions are actually super interesting. What I normally see is that's how it goes, okay? And it's very subconscious first. Your wife or your husband, they say something to you and you say, what? Then they repeat it and you say, come again, I didn't hear you. And then you say something along the lines, stop mumbling or don't keep walking away when you're talking to me. And after some time, your wife or your partner will subconsciously, even before they talk, they will think, is what I'm going to say important enough to repeat 3 times? Because that's kind of what I always have to do. And they'll start not to communicate the little things to you and only talk about the important things. But relationships are built on communication and on talking about everything, even the little things. When communication stops, relationships start to fall apart. And that, to me, is one of the worst possible prices you can pay. At that stage, I often get nods from husband and wives that are the person that is actually doing that. They are stopping to talk because their partner can't hear them well and it's just got too much for them. They have to repeat everything. They don't want to do that. The result of that is that it may result in a much higher rate of depression and loneliness compared to people who actually treat their hearing loss and get hearing devices. That's according to a couple of studies that I looked at that were looking at these factors of loneliness, depression, especially in the higher age groups. And again, the studies are linked in the description of the video. Now, we've discussed a couple of things of what it costs to do it, what you have to pay with, and what you have to pay with if you don't do it. And I want you to consider right now, what are you prepared to pay with? Are you ready to give up on the how you feel and how other people may think? Are you prepared to part with some money, even if it can be a substantial amount? Then you may well be at the stage where you say, like, get hearing aids. And I'd encourage you to go and investigate that. And if you're not prepared to pay the price, are you prepared to pay the price of non-treatment? I know it sounds harsh, but it's the reality. And I want you to know all things before you can make a decision for or against hearing treatment. Not here to judge you, not here to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. Everyone has a different value set and what they consider a risk and reward ratio, and that's totally okay. I just want you to make a confident and a comfortable decision. And for that, you should consider those aspects really well. Now, I want to make a quick mention at the financial cost. And again, there will be a much more detailed video later because it really deserves that. Hearing aids technically come in a lot of different technology levels. And manufacturers, so we call them the big six, big six reputable hearing aid manufacturers, they basically always want to outcompete each other. So what they do is they develop the best of the best that's currently available, and that's their top range, their top tier model. And then from there, because they know not everyone can afford that, they downgrade those devices to make them cheaper. But that means that they're taking technology away that was originally developed to best treat hearing loss. And therefore, whenever you go down in price of a device, just be aware that hearing loss affects every second of your life, and you're losing features that make you hear less or worse every second of your life. I really find that is such an important aspect to consider. As a result, in our clinic, we normally provide only top-range devices, especially because we are practicing according to best practice principles, and that means we always want to use the best possible technology to give you the best chance of hearing success. But again, and I'll talk about that all the time, it's not only about the technology that makes a difference. It's how the devices are fitted that matters most. And there can be quite a range in how different companies or clinicians do that. And if you want to find a clinician in Australia where a clinician who is committed to following best practices, then why don't you head over to Dr. Cliff's website? It's called Hearing Up, and there you can find a provider finder here in Australia as well. The link will be in the description. And as usual, if you've got any questions or comments, why don't you get in touch with me? I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video soon. Until then, bye-bye.